So diving in a little bit more specifically to just Palantir, they've
Mhm,
recently released AIP. Was it a
mhm.
surprise for you to see them release a product like this? I imagine not. What are your first thoughts? Are you impressed at how quickly they've moved? Are you bullish on their products as a whole?
I want to say first things first. I have not touched the product. I have not seen it in real life. So just I want to preface that for everyone to say like everything I'm saying is speculation based on what I know about them and what they've done in the past. Am I surprised? No. It was in fact, I would have been very surprised if they didn't. So I'm actually like there was a moment of like relief to not only be very fast to the market, but also a very thorough and complete tool. I think probably on top of that as well is it makes perfect sense. If you only are on Twitter, right, or YouTube, and you're getting all of your technology news from sort of like that space, you're getting the news, but you're getting it somewhat out of the context of the users. The reason why more businesses have not thrown LLM into the mix isn't because it's not game changing. It is clearly game changing. It's because they can't allow their data to be accessed by third parties. They can't allow a competitor to ever see their data. And so the problem, I'm using the word problem, but understand the issue for a private business or any business for that matter is they can't have someone else training on their data, right? That's their proprietary data. They need to own that. They need to monetize it. They need to deliver it to their teams and whatever usage they want. This gave them an opportunity to take a secure, potentially we think, right, a secure environment to do all the LLM work, deploy it as needed, and control it, right? When I say control, I should have mentioned this earlier in our talk, but this is a good time to do it either way. There's a huge component of AI and LLMs that really brings in the ethical concerns of it, right? You need to be able to make sure that you're turning on and off the right things to ensure that your outputs do not create instances of prejudice or negative things, right? There are some there are sometimes data points that can point to things that aren't meaningful but can be very unethical in their approach, right? Like I'm not even talking as broad as like sex, race, preferences. I'm talking just, financial. I'm talking like the way you eat. I'm talking about anything can be considered an ethical concern. So having the ability to not only bring the data together, model the data, and deliver the data, you want to have control of what's in the data, right? Maybe you want to turn off certain measures, right? If you're looking to deliver your best customer and you collect, as an example, race-based data, you don't need race-based data to understand your best customer. That's absurd. You want to make sure you can turn that off. If you're solving for a medical problem, why does the person's income matter to the output? Well, frankly, it doesn't. That can create an ethical concern. I want to make sure that I have a tool that allows me the level of access to strip that data out of the model, right? And this is what happens when you have a platform that's complete in protecting your data before it reaches out to anyone. You can turn those knobs, pull those levers, shut off those access points. Um, yeah, as far as the big question, which is like, can they execute on this, deliver it at scale, and do something that will provide market cap? It sort of seems like a yes. I mean, I don't want to get like super bullish. I have been in this for a long time, and because I've seen considerable iteration on the product. And to be fair, I want to call this out too. I'm very much like a sector thematic player, so I feel like there's a few people who can do this really well. But the big players are going to have their standard growth. Maybe they get a nice, decent double digit year, but I think the acceleration point here is for those mid-level players, these singular focused platforms like a Palantir, who can come in and say, when we get this right, it's explosive growth, right? It's not one division of 200, it's the company. So, definitely feeling pretty bullish on it. I think, as always, do your due diligence and make sure you're protecting yourself for the downside. If you have your entire life savings in one position based on whether LLMs work or not, that can be very scary. That said, to each their own too, though, right? So, do I think it's bullish? Yes. Is it exciting? Yes. Can they execute? Based on what they've done so far, it seems like they can. My general thesis on the Palantir opportunity has never been a question of their products. I think this is where people tend to get stuck sometimes. I know you don't, but like, I think there's a lot of like, will it work? Can they do this? Can they deliver it? And even in the sort of debate that happened recently amongst this topic, the real like boil the ocean moment wasn't about ontology. It wasn't about AI. It wasn't about forward deployed engineers. The thesis of the entire debate was, what should the valuation be, right? Because that's ultimately what any short seller or bear market person is going to say. And I think it's an important call out to say that, you know, you have to holistically look at where the world is going, who the players are going to grab onto that rocket ship and go with it. And assuming they can deploy these things the right way with the teams they have in place, they're going to be in good shape. The downside and the concern for me, if I'm being frank, is if you think globally, how many people have the skill set, acumen, and understanding to actually go out and sell this effectively to customers? Who can pick up a phone right now, call a CIO or CTO, and have a relevant sales-based conversation? Not a lot of people. I mean, sure, you can sort of cover the surface of it, but when it comes time to actually get into architecture, connectivity, right? How models are deployed, tested, and powered, right? How we look at and protect and understand data. There's not a huge amount of people that can do that.
And
So
and
my
also,
biggest,
sorry to interrupt there
yeah,
as well.
no, you're good.
Someone to receive that as well. Someone to be on the other
Agreed.
side of the fence there
Totally
is
agree.
just as
Totally agree.
important. Mm.
We have essentially this brand new industry that was created out of thin air, basically, at a global scale. So what a great call out. Who are the two people on both sides of the equation that can now talk intelligently, not only about your solution, but how it fits into their business when the rest of their business is still working through issues coming out of COVID, staffing, and remote work. So I think we have to be realistic in the perspective of like, how do we get people at least moderately trained up on the business side, on the sales side for these companies? How do we get the executives and leaders educated on what the future looks like so they're excited about it? And I think what it is going to take is time. I think we have to be realistic that the technology is slick and cool and very cutting edge, to say the least. But God, you're such a great man. You just made my whole day with the comment you just made. Like, if you have no one to sell to, it doesn't matter how good the product is. So there's going to be a long tail of education for a lot of these companies.
Mhm. So a few things you touch on then is scalability, deploying it, growth. Do you think so? One of the biggest sort of bear cases for Palantir has been the scalability. What was the scalability? Sorry, not the scalability, but well, yeah, actually rolling out and experiencing exponential growth, scaling Foundry to multiple
Sure,
companies. You know, that's
sure,
always been like a bear case for it. Do you think
sure.
AIP will be more scalable? Will it be easier? Is it going to have the same sort of difficulties?
So set the stage first. The only people who think scale is going to be an issue are people who don't work in this business. Anyone who works in the business understands that everyone, from the top players in the world to the smallest players, everything's outsourced. The partner model and the solution, excuse me, implementation model exists for 100 years. There is no such thing as, I'm talking about broadly here. Like at IBM, they had one of their biggest divisions is professional services, but even bigger than that is all of their partner channels. Same for Salesforce, same for Oracle, same for Google, same for Microsoft. You name it, they have a mega channel of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of partners who implement the solution after you buy it. Because implementation might mean data modernization. It might mean a digital strategy to go with it. It might mean actually building and implementing the tool. It might mean training the team on the tool after the fact. To use a lack of implementation as a reason to not scale, for me, feels like a real cheap cop out in terms of like, well, who's going to install it? Well, who's going to install it when you buy it from Microsoft? Who's going to install it if you buy it from Oracle? You think Oracle doesn't drop a server at your front door with a plug and say like, hey, good luck. You're buying services, or you have a dedicated database administrator who will then get a consultant to support the effort, right? A data science team, as brilliant as they are working on lots of things at once. They're going to bring in augmented staffing a lot of times, right? Now, I understand the scale conversation will affect the lower end market, the SMBs, the mid market, right? They don't have the kind of money to buy that complete solution. That's not where they're targeting their customers right now, as we can see. And when I say they, I mean the entire industry right now. It's really targeted towards the biggest players to create the use cases to help bring it down market. I think all it's going to take is for a clean, cohesive program of training partners at the big consulting players. The small players will start to pick this up as well, and then that will be your workforce from an implementation perspective. I think in many ways, the challenge is less about the scale and more about the building of the marketplace demand. If you and I own a company that installs IBM Watson, right? Just say I'm picking a random one. If you and I install IBM Watson, are we going to be willing to train our staff up on Foundry or AIP if there isn't associated business to go and do the installations at? Right. So the challenge that they have is more about how do they build their channel network versus are there literally hundreds of thousands of consultants sitting on the bench waiting to be deployed right now. There is a glut of consultants without enough work. So the workload is not the issue. The issue is building the demand of the double-sided marketplace, and that will then generate the need and desire to bring more people onto that program. That's my take on it.